So let's talk about Canada and if Canada is going to break up, if provinces such as Alberta are going to leave and join the United States, as has been discussed. We've seen this in the news. We've heard that there's an actual movement in Alberta to now join the US since President Trump has discussed this possibility of taking Canada as part of the United States. So, what do I see about it? Let's discuss it. First of all, what's going on? Let's just kind of give an overview of which parts of Canada are considering moving to become part of the United States. So we have actually heard that this is in more provinces than just Alberta. Okay. So what AI says is these movements are strongest in Alberta and British Columbia, but lesser ones exist in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And the movements have also assumed that Canada's northern territories, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut would also be part of a new Western Canadian Union. So this is the idea here, and that would be separating from sort of the coastal areas of Canada, which are perhaps more liberal. Okay, they call Alberta the Texas of Canada, right? It's a lot more rural, a lot more sort of same sort of values as you get in Texas. I spent time in Alberta, and I can tell you that is true. It is true. It is like that in Alberta. That's the only part of Canada I've spent time in. But the more liberal parts of Canada would be the coastal ones, similar to California and New York, right? So we're talking about the coastal strongholds where the largest population exists would be the more liberal parts of Canada. Toronto, which is in Ontario, right? And Ontario, Quebec, those are sort of on the East Coast. And then maybe some larger, more populated cities on the West Coast would want to sort of stay Canadian, okay? And essentially, this idea of breaking up the country may kind of take a strip up the west coast of Canada. So it's all over the place, okay? It's not unified or like it's not neatly divisible, number one. So it would be very difficult to do. And there is discussion in a lot of parts of Canada about this. And is this going to happen? Is really, I guess, the question. Is it going to split up? But what I see is not like that, okay? It's not going to turn into stripes of more American areas, okay? It's and that join us, and then other parts that are going to be Canada. I do think that the border is going to stay intact. They're very, very strict at their border in Canada. Let me tell you, having crossed it a couple times. So but I do, even if it plays out the way I see it playing out. So I do think this movement will pick up steam. Canada owes the United States a lot of money, and Canada has a lot of resources that the U.S. wants. Things like, things I've discussed in the members area. I'm not sure how much I can say really out here on this platform, but I go into a lot, I can't go into detail about this in the members area, so I'm doing the video here on YouTube, but there are resources up there that the United States would want to use, right? So that would be part of what this sort of alliance deal would be. What I see, now we know that Trump has no problem going and just taking the land that he's decided belongs under U.S. control, like he just did with Venezuela, having said prior to doing this that, we should have taken Venezuela when I was president last time because it would have been easy to do. And so then he went and did it now when it was maybe less easy to do, but still did it, right? So now we have Venezuela under our control, regardless of what they say in the courts or whatever, it's under our control. And we now have access to that crude, that heavy crude that they use in the United States. Someone argued with me that U.S. doesn't use heavy crude. We use light sweet crude in the United States. That's what most of our cars run on, and it needs additional processing. Canada does that processing. A lot of that processing is done in Alberta. I was in a town that did a lot of that processing. The oil, they call them the oil patch. So this is just the geopolitical, and there are other places, obviously, along the way that these kind of processing on the East Coast and various places where we can process oil. Okay, that's secondary issue to the idea of Trump wanting to procure lands that have a lot of natural resources. This is Greenland. We've now heard discussed again, going after Greenland, Canada, Mexico. Essentially, he wants to create one sort of under one umbrella, a America's uh, country, region, territory. I would say more like an America's territory that would include Canada and Mexico. That's how I see this going down. But what's interesting about it is that I see it happening. Like I've spoken before many years ago, I think 2019, 2020, 2021, and I have the map on my site. You can actually look at, well, it's in the members area, but the post is on my site about how I see the US actually breaking up. So, but that's not probably until after there's this unified territories that's created in the Americas. So it's like we're going to have more of a higher level sort of territories agreement between these three countries, Mexico, the United States, and Canada, where we sort of are under a similar umbrella, maybe using a similar currency, things like that, while at the same time, the regions in the United States are going to break up where they don't actually pay much attention to the federal government in the same way. In this case, these areas inside the United States would turn into more regional governing areas, okay? And it's like 5 pieces that the United States would break into. Now that's going to be amplified by geological changes that are coming to the United States. So on the West Coast, through the San Francisco Bay, where it's going to crack open and it will flood the basin, which is like a bowl. Central California is like a bowl, and create a peninsula down the coast, right? And then there will be a filled bowl in California, and it will look like Baja California as a peninsula, but going in the opposite direction. So those are geological changes. I'm not sure the timing, right? How all of this kind of fits together. I would say you're looking at the next between now and 2050 for all these big changes to happen. So we're looking at a longer term period of time, but with the breakup of Canada, or the changes related to Canada, that's going to be tension inside of Canada, which are going to come out of financial issues that are going to cause parts of Canada to be discussing wanting to come join the United States, as Alberta already has, and other states like British Columbia, and them trying to do this. And then, of course, more of like we're going up there and we're going to take it from this country, and then also with Mexico as well. But I expect the thing with Canada would happen first, although Mexico is going to be critical as well. But this is going to be later, maybe a couple of years from now, after we go through a financial collapse, probably closer to just later, a couple of years from now, closer to, I don't know if I can say, but maybe after 2027, 28, 29, up to 2030, that would be more like we're getting, that's just sort of the timing I'm getting now. It could change as we get closer and events trigger to start to move us in those directions. But that is going to lead more to this unified regions of the America. Okay. And I've heard people make jokes about what they would call it and things like that. But Trump is dead serious. He's dead serious. Trump is as serious as he was about Venezuela, which has already been captured. Yes, there was the leadership, and we're going to institute more leadership, but it's like the Fed. I'm going to put in somebody that agrees with me, right? So that's where we're at with Venezuela, and that's what's going to, and now we're talking about Greenland, right? And then we're talking about Canada, and then we're talking about Mexico. These are going to be how much can I say here? So these are about, like I said, these places that have resources, okay? And this has a lot to do with strategy in relation to things that are going on in China and the resources China has, and Russia and the resources Russia has, and India to some degree, and and of course there's the Middle East too, but they're not really so much about the resource war as they are about the belief system war. And but Russia and China have alliances, right? They're working together. They have deals with each other. And India, a little bit in the middle there, okay? And China, and Japan also is aligned with us, but their economy is in a lot of trouble. And they're doing things that are, that's another subject, but there's a lot happening on this geopolitical stage that is going to lead to the umbrella of the territories of the Americas. I think that's a good way of describing it. The territories of the Americas. That's how I would look at it. And that I see it as being actually all of Canada that gets connected and Mexico that gets connected. But moving from region to region, there will still be borders. Okay. There's still going to be paperwork or documentation or, legal hoops or technological hoops you have to jump through in order to move from one region to another. Okay. Because there's just a lot they have to deal with in order to deal with multiple populations in these different regions. So it will be a regions of the America, but it's not necessarily going to be the same the way we think of America, where we just drive around from, or you think of Canada, or you think of Mexico, where you can just drive from one state to another and boom, you're fine. We have borders, and those borders are not going to end. They're not going to go away. And also the U.S. in terms of internally, its governing is going to shift more to smaller regions of local governance. Okay. So that's how I see it. And Canada, it's going to be a lot of internal skirmishes before we get to that. So I don't know exactly. I'm not on Canadian media a lot, watching what's happening inside of the Canadian political system, but I do see a lot of conflict within the different regions about what's going on and what the political situation is, and the fact that Canada is a little further along in the economic problem situation than the US is. So they're already having housing issues. They're already, having their economy is having a lot of inflation. Things are already going in a direction that's not good for the people. And so certain regions are we've had it with our government. We don't want to deal with them anymore. Specifically, as I just read off, British Columbia and Alberta, and then these other regions, some of them have very low populations, like Yukon and Nunavut are almost unpopulated, but they still have a lot of resources up there, a lot, especially those very far north territories. So this is why this is under discussion. Trump is clearly not a environmentally protection-minded president. Okay, he's not trying to protect the forests and things like that. All right, but there are things that do need to be solved that he's working on, sort of solving, kind of. So, I'm not saying I'm a fan of him. I didn't vote. I tell you guys all the time, I'm not on either party. I don't vote because I think that governance really needs to be local. Honestly, it just needs to be your region, and even just breaking down into smaller, a few states governing together, that's not small enough for me. I think it should just be, your town and your county. That's pretty much it. I don't think we should be paying any attention to in terms of them governing us, I don't think the larger structure needs to have any influence on us in our regions. That's how I look at it personally, but because that's the only thing that's going to work. It's also what I see happening. Okay. Because that's the only thing that's going to work. It's the only way you can police and manage and create resources for the local communities and understand what the needs are, what the resources are that are there, all of that sort of thing. That's really the only way it will work. And so this is also when I discuss this idea of Americas, the American territories, the territory of the Americas, that it becomes definitely an issue about the resources and how the resources are working, but we're also moving into a period of time where there's going to be these smart cities that are starting to crop up, and we're discussing who's going where. Okay, so different people are going to go into different parts of these regions, and there's going to be different sort of, I think, different classifications of citizenship. That's how I would put it. Okay, so people even from far other parts of the world, like India, will have a classification of citizenship in the United States, as we already do with these basic H1N1 visa. I think it's whatever it's called, the tech visas that are all used in Silicon Valley that Elon Musk needs. Otherwise, if he doesn't have that cheap brain power, he can't run his companies. So these kinds of things are going to happen. You're going to see categories of citizenship also. And yeah, it's going to get pretty interesting. Things are going to get kind of wild. So that is what I have for you on the breakup of Canada. I don't actually see Canada fully breaking up. I see it having internal conflicts and noises in that direction. And the Alberta movement is likely to move more in that direction and lead the charge towards discussions with the United States, which will kind of force everyone else to come to the table and have a discussion where Trump's like, we'll just take it on. Basically, we'll all just come together and it will be kind of a deal. It will look like a negotiation and a deal that's being made, but it's going to come out of internal conflict inside of Canada for the most part. That's how I see it. So that's it. That's what I've got. Hopefully that's helpful to you guys. And if you want more, if you want to know more about what I offer, go to my website, auraright.media. There are tons and tons of free posts on the blog. There's also, of course, membership, which has a lot more deeper forecasts and timing on crypto, silver. I was telling everyone silver's going to shoot through 50 in October, which it did, and then it's going to shoot through 60 in November, which it did, and then December, and then, we're crazy in silver. I have a lot more specific predictions and timing in the members area. So hopefully I'll see you there. Join my Telegram group, which is also free, in the description box below. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.